Hello and welcome. I'm Walter the Bearded Hooker, and in this video I'm going to show you how to crochet the two rows together. So in the first video I showed you, first joining video I showed you how to do the blocks together. So you had this nice kind of ridge here, and now we're just gonna, it is essentially the same process. You hold the two rows together, right sides facing. I am going to remove my stitch markers here. And I'm using an eye or 5.5 millimeter hook. You line up your stitches, and then again you are going from the outside loop to the outside loop. Or if we were looking at it from right side to right side, it's the back loop to the back loop. So I am going to join. Do a slip stitch, and you want to do the slip stitches really loosely. So this is the corner. So we always join one stitch to the right of the corner, and then we're just slip stitching, which is the way we did the blocks to begin with. And the sun has decided to make an appearance, I think for the first time in 3 weeks. I am going to shut the curtain. There, that should be better. Okay. And again, this is the same exact way we joined the other two squares together when we were doing the individual squares into rows. The difference here is going to be when we come to the joining of two squares. So again, you just slip stitch. You want to make sure you're slip stitching very loosely. You don't want it tight because it could cause puckering. And now we're coming up to the place where we did the single crochets before the corner, or the slip stitch before the corner and after the corner. Just get the hook in this last stitch, slip stitch. So this is where we did the original joins. So you want to do a slip stitch in this stitch. You also want to do a slip stitch into the slip stitches from the prior, from the joining of the squares. And you just got to kind of force your hook through there and grab a piece of the yarn. And then you want to do it in the one after as well. And then when you flip it over, and let me remove the stitch marker, you can see how we now have this same ridge look here. This is where we join the squares together, and then this is what we're doing now. And then this is complete, and of course I'm going to show it again after we do a little more stitches, but there's no gap in here. You don't want any holes where your squares are coming together. And the other thing I forgot to mention is that sometimes when you're looking at like the stitches here, it looks like they're uneven, which is okay, because when you go back through and you're joining them, it'll be fine. And then when we look at the edge kind of like here, how it's uneven, this has to do with the blocking, and it has to do with that each square typically is a different number of starting chains, and it's different stitches in within, and that kind of happens. But when we go back through and are putting our final border on, that'll straighten out, and it won't look like that when we're finished. So, and then when I pulled the yarn, I actually pulled out some stitches. And then again, you slip stitch straight across, remembering to keep it very loose. If you have super tight tension and you tend to crochet super tightly, you certainly can go up to a J hook at this point so that it's not too tight, because again, if it is too tight, your blanket won't drape well and it'll have puckers in it, and you don't want that. Stitch before. This is the actual slip stitch from each corner from the prior joining. Sometimes you just gotta fight to get your hook to catch a loop. Pull it through. And here's the next. Now that we have two done, when we open it up, you can see that was the first one. And when you're doing it, you want to make sure you're lining up your stitches so that the corners form corners, right? And so for this one, I have one stitch too many on this square here. So I'll be able to show you what I was referring to earlier. So I'm just going to do a couple like this. So I'm not right next to the corner, I'm kind of in the middle of the square. And then because I have one stitch too many on the square facing me, I'm gonna slip stitch into the back of the loop, but I'm gonna go into this loop here, which I've already used. So I'm gonna go in here and do that, and then that kind of just shifts everything one to the right, and now everything else will line up. And then I'll show you when we flip it over to the other side that it's not puckered or out of shape, because it was just one stitch. And if it's 2 or 3 stitches, you can still do the same thing. You just want to space them out. You don't want, all 3 right next to each other. And that is the end of joining 2 columns or 2 rows together. And then when we open it up, we can see that this is joined here and here. And then you can't, it doesn't look like it's pleated or puckered at all when we do this. So when in this area is where I had that stitch that I did 2 together from this side to that side. So yeah, so that is how you join 2 rows together. As I said, we are 1/3 of the way there. This is going to be a total of 30 different squares when we're finished. And then, as I mentioned, I'm going to do an extra large wide border on this. I'm going to do because when we look at it this way, this is really 4 rows of the lavender. You know, the first row, 2, 1, 2, and that's 4. On the outside, we have the 2 rows already. So we will be adding an additional 2 rows of single crochet. Then I'm going to do a row of folded triple crochet. And then I think I'm going to add maybe 2 or 3 inches more of additional border. I'm not sure which border yet, but certainly when I get to that point, we will be discussing it. So if you like this content, please like and subscribe. If there's somebody who you think would appreciate this, please feel free to share with them. Thank you. Have a great day. And remember, keep on hooking.